What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the episode of the Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joey Mailari. So in today's episode, I'm going to give my mock draft for tonight's first round of the NFL Draft. In years past, I feel like I knew a lot more players in the first round and second rounds. I feel like I had so much more insight into what was going on. So when I did mock drafts, I had 7 or 8 of them usually for each draft. I would put a mock draft out during the college football season, one just after the season, and then in the months leading up to the draft, I feel like I would have at least 2 mocks out each month. But unfortunately, this year, I didn't follow it as much. This is my only mock draft that I have for this year's draft. Which, with that being said, there are some guys that I know a lot about. There are some guys I don't know as much about. So when I'm making these predictions, I might be wrong on some of these picks of where guys are going to go and where they're going to get drafted, draft pick wise, whether they be a top 5 pick, top 20 pick, whatever it may be. Might be off a little bit here, but that's the beauty of the draft. No one knows how things are going to work out until the draft happens. It's an exciting night in sports, though. You have the first round of the NFL draft at 8 p.m. You got the Bruins and the Sabres playing in Game 3 tonight. You got the Knicks and the Hawks playing in Game 3 tonight. So it really is just a fun time here in sports. You got the Red Sox hosting the Yankees tonight. Been a really rough start to the year for the Red Sox, losing each of the last 2 nights to the Yankees. That's a story for another day, though. Let's dive into my mock draft for tonight's first round, starting out with the Las Vegas Raiders. No-brainer pick here. They're going to take Fernando Mendoza, quarterback out of Indiana. 41 touchdowns to 6 interceptions this past year at Indiana. Won the Heisman. Also won the national championship. I'm not completely sold on Mendoza being an NFL franchise quarterback. With that being said, he seems like a great person and someone who's a genuine leader. So I'm wishing him all the best. I feel like I do have some questions about his arm strength and his ability to make plays in the pocket against heavy pressure. He doesn't really have the best mobility, and like I said, doesn't really have the best of arm strength, so I do think that is a concern. Also in the pocket, he's not really as poised as some other prospects have been that have gone number 1 overall in the past at the quarterback position. We'll see how things work out. I'm wishing him all the best, but like I said, I do not think he is an NFL franchise quarterback. With that being said, I could be wrong. I had concerns with Joe Burrow in the past. Then Joe Burrow lit it up in the NFL, and I was honest saying, yes, I was completely wrong about Burrow, so I could be wrong here about Mendoza. We'll see how things go, but I do think he seems like a really good kid, so I am wishing him all of the best. Now moving on to the New York Jets, edge rusher Arvell Reese out of Ohio State. I'm going to the Jets there at 2. The Jets need help on their defensive line. They traded Quinnen Williams last year. They could revitalize their D-line by adding Arvell Reese. Did show potential last year, 6.5 sacks, was a good pass rusher, strong versatility, good speed, 69 combined tackles last year for Ohio State. I know he's starting to fall in some mock drafts as of recent days, but I do think he still goes number 2 there to the Jets. Has strong power, good speed. I do think that can help that Jets defense in their rebuild. I have him going to the Jets at 2. Then at number 3, I have the Arizona Cardinals taking offensive tackle Francis Mauigoa out of Miami, Florida. The Cardinals could go in a million different directions with this pick, but I have them upgraded their offensive line here with Mauigoa. The Cardinals currently have Jacoby Brissett slated to be their quarterback, so it's very likely they get a quarterback in the draft at some point. I don't think it's going to be here at number 3. I don't think anybody thinks it'll be a quarterback here at number 3. So why not go and try to find a potential bookend tackle of the future there in Mauigoa, even if he ends up sliding into the inside at some point in his NFL career. Drafting an offensive lineman is never really the sexy pick that fans want, but at the end of the day, when you want to win and try to win a Super Bowl and create a team that's going to be competing for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you really do have to win in the trenches on the offensive line, defensive line. So at the end of the day here, it would not be a bad pick here for the Cardinals to invest in their offensive line, and that's what I have them doing here with this 3rd pick. At number 4, I have the Tennessee Titans taking running back Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. I think Jeremiah Love is the most talented player in this year's draft, so I would love to see him go somewhere and thrive. No running back has gone in the top 5, though, since Saquon Barkley went number 2 in 2018. With that being said, running backs have been considered and drafted in the first round a lot more in recent years. He has a big play ability, which the home run hitting talent will definitely help at the next level. He works his way around tackles very well, is elusive, and has great vision, finding the hole that his offensive line creates. I like his game a lot. Saw him play in person at BC. He would be going to an offense that already has Calvin Ridley, Cam Ward, Wan'Dale Robinson, with Brian Daboll as OC. I think this would be a really good landing spot there for Jeremiah Love. Then moving on to number 5, I have the New York Giants taking linebacker Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. Here's another place that's so tough to predict. There are reports recently that the Giants aren't interested in Styles, but I do think that's a smokescreen. The Giants have struggled for years with tackling issues, so getting an elite tackler in Styles, who's also really good in coverage, would help this defense tremendously. The Giants have not had a great cover linebacker in years, and if you get Sonny Styles, you're getting a guy who's excellent in coverage. Styles is a freak athlete, had a great combine. He reminds me a lot of Isaiah Simmons. Isaiah Simmons played linebacker and safety at the college level. Styles played safety at the beginning of his career at Ohio State and then transitioned to linebacker. He seems to be more reliable in coverage, I would say, than Isaiah Simmons. I'm excited to see where Styles goes. He had an elite combine, like I said, and a great career at Ohio State. Would love to see him on the Giants, and I'm wishing him all of the best wherever he ends up. He is going to be a tackling machine at the next level. Now moving on to the number 6 pick, I have the Cleveland Browns taking wide receiver Connell Tate out of Ohio State. I would be shocked if the Browns do not draft a receiver in the first round with one of their 2 picks. The question is, do they take the receiver earlier or later, at the beginning of the first round or the end of the first round? Connell Tate has strong hands, big playability, something that this Browns team really needs. And whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, it doesn't matter who's a quarterback for the Browns, which I do think Shedeur should be their starting quarterback next year. We'll see how things play out. Watson could end up being the starter because of financial reasons. He's still getting paid heavy money. So at the end of the day, they may start him at the start of the season. But if you get Connell Tate, a guy who can get open, that's going to be good for no matter who is quarterback for that team. Now moving on to number 7, I have the Washington Commanders taking edge rusher David Bailey out of Texas Tech. He had 14.5 sacks last season, led the FBS, also had 19.5 tackles, which was great. Really good athlete with a great arsenal of pass rush moves. People believe he's a little bit undersized, but he has shown the potential to be a really good pass rusher at the next level. So I have the Commanders revitalizing their defense here, taking Bailey at 7. At number 8, I have the Los Angeles Rams trading up here with the New Orleans Saints. I have the Rams trading the 13th and the 61st overall picks in this year's draft to move up to number 8. And I have the Rams taking wide receiver Mekhi Lemon out of USC. The Rams are enamored with Mekhi Lemon, according to reports. And if you add a game-breaking, home run-hitting talent in Mekhi Lemon to an offense that already has Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, and Matt Stafford, it becomes even more dynamic and maybe the best offense in the league. I'm very high on Mekhi Lemon. Would love to see him on the Giants and fall to the Giants at 10. I don't think that ends up being the case. I have the Rams trading up here and getting him at number 8. As I said, I think he's the best receiver in this draft. We'll see how things play out, but I'm very high on Mekhi Lemon. At number 9, I have the Dallas Cowboys trading up with the Kansas City Chiefs. I have Dallas trading the 12th and the 92nd overall picks for the 9th pick in this year's draft, and I have the Cowboys taking safety Caleb Downs out of Ohio State. The Cowboys really need to address their defensive needs, especially in their secondary and on the defensive line. I think Dallas knows the Giants would love to take Caleb Downs at 10, which is why I have them jumping up here and drafting Downs, who projects to be a star safety at the next level. We've seen this happen in the past, where teams that are in the same division jump ahead of the other one that they know may be interested in a player that they want. We saw that a few years ago in the NFL draft when the Eagles jumped ahead of the New York Giants to draft Devontae Smith in the 2021 NFL draft. I think this happens again tonight. I think the Dallas Cowboys jump the New York Giants and take Caleb Downs at 9 to help their defense. I'm very high on Downs. I would love to see him on the Giants, but I don't expect them to take him at 5, so they may gamble and see if he's there at 10. But here in this mock draft, they end up losing there when rolling the dice to wait to get him at 10. Then at number 10, I have the New York Giants taking cornerback Mansour Delane out of LSU. The Giants' secondary is desperate for a lockdown corner, which they could end up getting here with Delane. The Giants need to take at least one defensive player with one of their top 10 picks. They now have that second top 10 pick there, getting the number 10 overall pick in the Dexter Lawrence trade with the Cincinnati Bengals. Delane is an athletic and versatile cornerback, plays physically despite not being the biggest corner. He's the best corner in the class and would step in as a Giants CB1 next season. At number 11, I have the Miami Dolphins taking offensive tackle Spencer Fano out of Utah. The new GM of the Miami Dolphins is John Eric Sullivan, and their new head coach is Jeff Hafley. Both of them spent time in Green Bay. They're coming from a place in Green Bay who never really took a wide receiver in the first round, except last year. They took Matthew Golden in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. I think the Dolphins go either offensive line or defense here. Although wide receiver is a need, and it's possible they go wide receiver. I do think they go offensive line instead. They would add a very versatile offensive lineman who may be able to play inside and outside at the next level. He's 6'6", 311. He would be a good pick there for the Miami Dolphins rebuild to be an anchor on that offensive line, and to be taking a shot on a guy that has a really big build, has a tremendous upside. We would see how things work out if he does end up in Miami, but I don't think that would be a bad selection for them. Moving on to number 12, I have the Kansas City Chiefs, who traded down to the Dallas Cowboys. I have the Kansas City Chiefs taking cornerback Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee. He has injury concerns, which is why he may fall further in the draft, but McCoy has elite ball skills, great in-man coverage. He's going to be a lockdown defender at the next level if he stays healthy, and the Chiefs secondary, they always find a way to replenish. Each and every year, they lose guys, and then they end up finding a way to replace them. I have them doing so here, taking McCoy at number 12. At number 13, I have the New Orleans Saints, who originally traded down here. I projected a trade between them and the LA Rams. I had the Rams jumping to pick 8 and the Saints falling from 8 to 13. And I have the Saints taking Ruben Bain Jr., an edge rusher out of Miami, Florida. I know there's a lot of concerns about his short arms and that being a problem at the next level. The Saints right now are in a rebuild, so adding an extra draft pick while also at the same time adding an edge rusher to maybe be an anchor on the defensive line for them is a plus, even though Bain does have his concerns about short arms. At the end of the day, there are guys in the past that have had short arms who have had success at the next level. We've seen that with Aaron Donald. There were some question marks, if I remember correctly, about him having short arms. And then we saw him obviously be one of the best defensive players in NFL history. Not sure if that'll be the same track record here with Ruben Bain. I don't know if he'll end up being as successful as Aaron Donald was. But at the end of the day, these measurements of the combine, what they do for bench reps and 40-yard dashes, all of that can matter. But at the same time, what you see on film and the production you're seeing on tape should matter more than what their measurements are in, the combine. So we'll see how things work out. I have the Saints taking Bain here at 13. At number 14, I have the Baltimore Ravens taking tight end Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. This would be a good pick for Lamar Jackson. They just lost Isaiah Likely in free agency. They'd be adding a playmaking tight end and helping Lamar Jackson out, who at the end of the day, he could use more help, I think, at the wide receiver position. If you're adding a tight end, that's another playmaking next to Lamar. I do think that would be a good pick there for them. At number 15, I have the Philadelphia Eagles trading up here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I have them taking offensive tackle Caden Proctor out of Alabama. The Philadelphia Eagles do need to get the next tackle of the future. They obviously have had an aging offensive line the last few seasons, have battled a lot of injuries. Lane Johnson's been hurt at times. They would go out and get Caden Proctor here and jump a lot of teams that are interested in potentially drafting a tackle in this year's draft. The Eagles don't have too many needs. Offensive line is definitely something they could use, but they don't have too many needs. They have the luxury of taking whoever they would like. In this mock trade, I can't remember exactly what I had them trading in this package to move up. If I remember correctly, the Eagles would be trading the 23rd overall pick in this year's draft alongside a third-round pick and maybe like a sixth-round pick to move up here to 15 to draft Caden Proctor out of Alabama. At number 16, I have the New York Jets taking wide receiver Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. There's a lot of question marks about his availability and injury concerns. Tyson does have that potential big playmaking ability just because of how good he is as a route runner and his body control, finding the ball in the air and making catches in traffic. I do think, though, there are some concerns, obviously, with the injury concerns. I think they're valid. This would be a roll of the dice here for the Jets, but at the end of the day, if he falls to 16 and there's a chance he could go even higher, maybe the New York Giants even could draft him at 5, there are rumors about. If the Jets get him here at 16, it's not a bad value pick if he does fall there. We'll see how things work out. They do need help at receiver, and they would be adding that to an offense that already has Garrett Wilson. At number 17, I have the Detroit Lions taking offensive tackle Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. Offensive line is somewhat of a need for them. They could go in a lot of different directions here, the Lions. I do have them taking offensive linemen and trying to strengthen their O-line here with this pick. At number 18, I have the Minnesota Vikings taking safety Emmanuel McNeil Warren out of Toledo. He's a 6'3" safety, versatile, had a half a sack last year, 5.5 tackles for a loss, 3 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 77 tackles, which is very impressive. He's a hard-hitting safety who may not be the fastest player on the field, but he plays physically, and honestly, I think is the most underrated DB that could go day one, in my opinion. They need a replacement for Harrison Smith, so if you go out and get McNeil Warren, he could end up being a really good piece for their defense. You look at Toledo, they've produced a really good cornerback over the last couple years in Quinyon Mitchell. I was very high on Quinyon Mitchell. I may not be as high on Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, but I think he's going to be a very good player at the next level. I like this pick here for Minnesota at 18. At number 19, I have the Carolina Panthers taking wide receiver Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana. I think he is the most underrated first-round prospect in the draft. His athleticism is off the charts. He had some big moments this past year for Indiana. Adding him to an offense that already has Bryce Young and Tetairoa McMillan brings that offense's potential up even more. I would love this draft spot here for him. I think he is a very good player. I don't think he's getting as much hype as he deserves in respect to some of the other first-round wide receivers that could go early in the draft. I think this guy is a tremendous player. I would love to see him on the Giants if they potentially traded down. I don't think that will be the case, but I think he's going to be potentially the steal of the first round and maybe the best wide receiver in this year's draft. I like Mekhi Lemon most, but Omar Cooper Jr. I think potentially could be the second best receiver in this year's draft. At number 20, I have the Los Angeles Chargers trading up with the Dallas Cowboys here. I have the Chargers trading the 22nd pick and the 123rd pick in this year's draft for the number 20 pick from the Dallas Cowboys. And with this pick, I have the Chargers taking Vega Ioane, who is an offensive guard out of Penn State. With this pick here, they're adding an offensive lineman who has a very strong build, can be elite at the next level in the run game. That's something that this offense needs. Justin Herbert needs more help. That's no surprise. Everyone would agree Justin Herbert needs more help on the offensive line, like we saw last year in the playoffs against the Patriots. I would love this pick here for the Chargers. I know in recent years they have gone offensive line now a few times. Zion Johnson, Joe Alt in recent years. I would not mind them taking another offensive lineman here and rolling the dice on Ioane to maybe be an anchor for that offensive line for years to come. At number 21, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who originally were trading down in this mock draft with the Philadelphia Eagles. I had them going from 15 to 23 in a trade with the Eagles. Now I have them jumping up from 23 to 21, and I have them giving up the 23rd overall pick and their 4th round pick in 2027 to move up to 21 here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I have the Buccaneers taking edge rusher Akeem Mesidor out of Miami, Florida. Mesidor filled the stat sheet last year for Miami, 12.5 sacks, 17.5 tackles for loss. There are some concerns with him, though, injuries being one, also his age. He's 24, 25 years old. That may cause him to fall in the draft, but he shows good potential as a pass rusher at the next level. I would like this pick here for the Buccaneers. At number 22 are the Dallas Cowboys, who I just had trading down with the Chargers, and I have the Dallas Cowboys adding cornerback Avion Terrell out of Clemson. Dallas landing Downs and Terrell in the same draft would be huge boosts to their secondary, and I could definitely see that happening with them doubling up here on the defense. At number 23, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I had trading down in this draft. I had them making a trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and moving down to 23 from 21. And with this 23rd pick, I have the Steelers taking Dylan Thieneman, a safety out of Oregon. Pittsburgh's in a weird spot right now. They're waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make his decision on whether or not he's going to return for next season. I don't think they're enamored enough to take Ty Simpson here, so I have them taking a safety to help their secondary, which secondary is a need for that team. At number 24, I have the Cleveland Browns taking Caleb Lemieux out of Utah. He's an offensive tackle. The Browns' offensive line is going to look a whole lot different next year. Why not add a 6'6", 313-pound offensive lineman who shows potential to be a really good starter at the next level? The Browns' offensive line has been very good for the most part the last 5 to 7 years. Now, the last couple of years, there were a lot of guys that got older, guys that have retired, guys that have left in free agency. It's going to be a much different looking offensive line this coming season. Why not go and try to get a potential anchor on your offensive line for years to come? So that's what I have them doing here with the 24th overall pick. At number 25, I have the Chicago Bears taking defensive tackle Caden McDonald out of Ohio State. The Bears' run defense definitely needs help. McDonald is the best run-stopping defensive tackle in the draft, according to many. So this would be a great pick here by Ryan Poles. At number 26, I have the Buffalo Bills taking offensive guard Chase Besantis out of Texas A&M. He's versatile. He's played left guard, and right tackle in college. Has a good build. The Bills definitely need to get some help on their offensive line and help Josh Allen. We saw that issue in the playoffs for them. So I have them going out and addressing the offensive line here with the 26th pick. At number 27, I have the Miami Dolphins trading up here from the 30th pick and making a trade here with the San Francisco 49ers. The Dolphins trading the 30th pick and the 130th pick in this year's draft. So 30 and 130 to move up to 27. And I have them taking Cassius Howell, an edge rusher out of Texas A&M. The Miami Dolphins, Like I said, they could go in a lot of directions in this year's draft. I do think defense is definitely a big need for them. I already had them taking offensive linemen earlier. Now I have them addressing their defense and adding an edge rusher. Howell has good speed. He's agile as a pass rusher. Had 14.5 tackles for a loss last year, an 11.5 sack season as well. Would be a good get for Miami here at 27. And I have them trading up. I think at the end of the day, they do have a lot of draft picks to work with. I think 11 in this year's draft. So if they would like to trade up for somebody, they're able to do so. At number 28, I have the Houston Texans taking offensive tackle Blake Miller out of Clemson. He's been a lot better of a pass blocker each and every year in college, it seems. He's been flying up draft boards over the last few weeks. I do think the Houston Texans need to address their offensive line. We've seen that problem in the past for C.J. Stroud, not having time to work in the pocket. So I have them taking an offensive lineman here at 28. At 29, I have the Kansas City Chiefs taking wide receiver Denzel Boston out of Washington. I'm not too familiar with Boston's game, but it seems though a lot of people are high on his size. He's 6'4", has really good body control. The Chiefs are in line for a strong comeback season when Patrick Mahomes returns to the lineup. They do need help at the receiver position. I think they've gone and tried to address the wide receiver position a lot in recent years since Tyreek Hill has left. I do think if you go out and get Denzel Boston, that could be a good roll of the dice, and he could end up being a really, really good playmaker next to Patrick Mahomes. At number 30, I have the San Francisco 49ers, so I had them trading down from 27 to 30 with the Miami Dolphins. And I have the 49ers taking here wide receiver KC Concepcion out of Texas A&M. The 49ers are weak at the wide receiver position. I would be shocked if they didn't grab a receiver with this pick. KC is a twitchy, quick receiver who can make plays in open space and gets open often. The issue is he has had some problems with drops, which is why I think he falls a little bit in this draft. I do think the Niners will address the wide receiver position with their first-round pick, and I have them doing so here at 30. Now moving on to the 31st pick, I have the Patriots trading down from 31, and I have them trading with the Arizona Cardinals. I have the Cardinals trading the 34th pick and 143rd overall picks in this year's draft to move back into the first round and get the 31st pick from the Patriots. And I have the Cardinals taking quarterback Ty Simpson out of Alabama. Ty Simpson may not be a dual threat, flashy quarterback that the game is trending towards, but he has a strong enough arm, I think, and I think he's shown that he can read coverages very well while also limiting turnovers. His ability to limit turnovers is definitely going to help him at the next level. We saw him have a really good last year at Alabama. I also think he could be a really good leader of players at the next level. He seems like a great leader. I loved one of his speeches before one of the games this season. I think it was a college football playoff game for Alabama. There was a video of him giving a speech to the team, and it seemed like a great speech to hype everyone up. I know obviously it did not end up going well for them in the CFP overall, but I do think Ty Simpson could be worth a gamble for a team at the back end of the first round to maybe get a fifth-year option on him. And in this trade, the Cardinals wouldn't be giving up much, the 34th and the 143rd overall picks. So in the event he ends up being a miss in next year's draft, if they probably are going to have a top pick, if they do have a top pick and they want to take a quarterback in next year's draft, there isn't like much of a tie to Ty Simpson. It's not like at the end of the day they're taking first overall in this year's draft, where in that case they would have a much different position on whether or not they would like to keep him. We've seen them in the past, though, with a different regime, take Josh Rosen and then the following year move on from him and draft Kyler Murray. So at the end of the day, you never know. I have them jumping back into the first round here, though, and taking Ty Simpson. And then to round out the first round of the NFL draft, I have the Seattle Seahawks taking cornerback Colton Hood out of Tennessee. He plays very physically for cornerback that's only around 6 foot. He had 8 pass breakups, 1 interception, 50 tackles last year in 2025, which I think his ability to tackle is honestly his best attribute. I like the way he plays a lot. I think he's going to be a gem wherever he goes. He plays more like a safety than a cornerback, but he will be a cornerback probably at the next level. Maybe if things don't work out there, he maybe jumps to playing safety. We'll see how things work out in the future. But with all of these picks and all of these mock trades, you never know how the mock drafts are going to translate to the real draft at the end of the day. But that's the beauty of the NFL draft. No one knows who's going to go where and how players are going to pan out. Some players that are supposed to be generational might not pan out and end up being potential busts. And then players that are in day 2 and day 3 that everyone's overlooking, or even players at the end of the first round that people are overlooking, might end up being gems and stars at the next level. That's the beauty of the NFL draft. No one knows how things are going to play out. That's why I want to give a mock draft before the first round began, which the first round's beginning sometime in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So I do want to upload this episode right before it begins. Anyways, that'll wrap up this episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. As always, I appreciate it. I hope everyone that watches the NFL draft has a great time. Best of luck to all the prospects that are going to go in day 1, day 2, and day 3, and the undrafted free agents. Best of luck to every player that is draft eligible. And I hope everybody enjoys watching tonight. Best of luck to all your teams. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.